ESCAP, and I'll be your host today to facilitate this meeting. It is my pleasure to also be seeing so many familiar faces as well as new ones. Just to briefly go over the objectives of the meeting is to invite member states' PPP units to present investment projects, to facilitate the sharing of views from investors and green finance experts to improve the bankability and sustainability of infrastructure project proposals, as well as share the Republic of Korea's experiences on PPPs in promoting private investment in infrastructure and managing PPP projects. You can also find the link to the detailed meeting program and the list of presenters in the chat box, which will be included. Before we start, may I kindly ask our guests to keep your video on, presenters, to keep your video on and mute your microphone when you're not speaking. So with this, without further ado, I would like to invite Dr. Tian Tip Sapanip, Chief of Investment and Enterprise Development, ESCAP, for her opening remarks. Dr. Tian Tip, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Daniel. Dr. Hun Tai Kim, Executive Director, Public and Private Infrastructure Investment Management Center, Korea Development Institute, Republic of Korea. Ms. Jiamin Yang, Deputy Director General, China Public-Private Partnership Center, Ministry of Finance, China. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. It is my great pleasure and honor to welcome you all to the 6th meeting of the Infrastructure Financing and Public-Private Partnerships Network of Asia and the Pacific, under the theme, the SDG Infrastructure Investment Fair. On behalf of ESCAP, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to the Korea Development Institute and the China Public-Private Partnership Center for all of their hard work and support in organizing this event with us. Ladies and gentlemen, we are at an encouraging point in time with respect to sustainable investment. The global pool of sustainable investment and green finance is growing rapidly. By early 2020, for example, sustainable investment in developed countries, for example, United States, Canada, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, and Europe, had reached a combined $35.3 trillion US, or an increase of 15% compared to 2018, and an increase of 55% compared to 2016. This translates into increased sustainable investment assets as a proportion of total assets under management from 27.9% in 2016 to 35.9% just last year. Not only is there an increasing amount of money going towards sustainable investment, but sustainability as a concept is becoming ever more fundamentally entwined with these investments. This deepening engagement is shown through the changing nature of sustainable investment. For example, in 2018, 2/3 of sustainable investments were in funds that apply negative or exclusionary screening criteria, which is the lightest version of sustainable investing, and essentially excluding sectors or companies considered not investable according to certain ESG criteria. On the other hand, by 2020, most funds were managed through ESG integration, which involves the systematic inclusion of ESG factor into financial analysis. So ladies and gentlemen, as you can now see, a silver lining of the tragic COVID-19 pandemic is that multiple reports and surveys of investors from all over the world indicate that pandemic has actually increased private sector's commitment to ESG principles. This means that global amount of sustainable investment are likely not just to increase, but to accelerate. While these trends are cause for optimism, we must not lose sight of the present situation regarding the SDG. Because despite the continued growth in sustainable investing, there remained a financing gap of 2.5 trillion per year, even before COVID-19. We therefore have to urgently still mobilize commercial finance and private investment at the scale needed to achieve the SDGs. Investment in sustainable development, especially in some developing countries, remains insufficient, and many institutional investors have yet to shift towards a long-term investment horizon. It is with this context and these ongoing trends in mind that our team at ESCAP, in collaboration with Korea Development Institute and China Public-Private Partnership Center, organized today's SDG Infrastructure Investment Fair. On the one hand, as I have outlined, there is an ever-increasing pool of global capital seeking investments aligned with ESG factors, which you, your country, PPP unit members of the network are poised to benefit from. Our goal at ESCAP is to help you position yourselves and your projects to take advantage of this opportunity to attract investment, to implement infrastructure projects that can move us closer to achieving the SDGs. Although current sustainable financing levels remain inefficient and insufficient, it is our belief that ESCAP, by supporting you to put together attractive bankable infrastructure PPP projects aligned with SDGs, we can help to mobilize even more investment into the sustainable realm, creating a pull factor to reduce the financing gap. So today, in session 1, we will hear project proposals from selected members of our network, which we hope will help those projects to attract financing and ultimately be realized. For country and PPP unit members who are not presenting, we hope that this session will also help you in formulating your own project proposals in the future. In session 2, we will all benefit from the opportunity to learn about the experience of implementing PPP in Korea, a world leader in this area, which has successfully implemented many PPP projects in recent decades. Finally, before closing the SDG Infrastructure Investment Fair, we will hear from a distinguished group of experts with experience in the private sector, public sector, development bank, and academia on how infrastructure proposals can better attract the growing sector of green finance and become more bankable. Ladies and gentlemen, it is our hope that this 6th meeting of the Infrastructure Financing and Public-Private Partnership will help you in implementing infrastructure projects and further our collective progress towards achieving SDGs. We look forward to deepening our engagement with each of you today, and I very much look forward to a productive meeting. Thank you very much, and over to you, Daniel.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tiantip, for framing the meeting today. I would now like to invite Dr. Hoon Tai Kim, Executive Director of the Public and Private Infrastructure Investment Management Center, PMAC, with the Korean Development Institute, KDI, to deliver his welcome remarks. Dr. Kim, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Daniel. Distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon, good morning, and maybe good evening to some of you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to this distinguished audience who are joining online from different time zones around the world. I am delighted to co-host this important event together with ESCAP and China PPP Center. I would like to express my gratitude to the two organizations for inviting us to jointly host the 6th meeting. As you are aware, we are still standing in the midst of a pandemic. Shock waves after shock waves are forcing the globe to falter. All business sectors, government policies, and people's everyday lives have been impacted by the coronavirus. We have learned since the COVID-19 began 2 years ago that a pandemic of present day isn't just a health crisis. Infrastructure sector has been hit hard by the pandemic, triggered by social distancing measures and by lockdowns. We are still too aware of the disruptions it has incurred in the airport sector, transport sector, and the list can go on. On the other hand, the COVID-19 has turned the spotlight to connectivity. Policies on digital services and the underlying communication infrastructure often entail demand for increased social and environmental sustainability. Infrastructure, therefore, should be prepared to witness acceleration of two transitions to come. First, transition to digital infrastructure such as remote working, e-commerce, and smart cities. Second, transition to increased public awareness on reckless growth and its impact on the environment and society. In line with such transition, and in order to share the vision of sustainable future, the Korean government in 2020 announced the Korean New Deal, under which implementation of the Digital New Deal and the Green New Deal and the Human New Deal are planned. Infrastructure policies are pursued according to the goals of each program. For the Digital New Deal, Korea is applying innovations from the fourth industrial revolution to build smart cities and digital infrastructure. Under the Green New Deal, Korea is overhauling its energy supply system toward low emission, with renewable energies emphasized as an important source of energy. Green architecture, such as green remodeling, is ushering in the green transition to the cities, living spaces, and infrastructure. Korea is implementing the Human New Deal to bridge the digital gap with the traditional industries to minimize disruptions to the businesses and workers in the sectors. One among several implementation strategies for successful execution of the policy is promotion of government and private investment. Total project cost amounting to $51 billion until 2025 will be invested to create new market and to pump up private sector demand. This brings me to public and private partnership in infrastructure development, as PPP has long been acknowledged as one way to mobilize private capital, not only to provide essential infrastructure, but also to drive innovation, including green innovation. I believe ensuring timely and reliable resources from both the government and the private is an important step for policy response and delivering a prompt and balanced recovery in the aftermath of the COVID-19 crisis. Along almost 30 years of Korean PPP history, the Public and Private Infrastructure Investment Management Center, PMAC of KDI, has functioned as a designated agency for performing PPP project value for money test and for offering policy advice to the government authorities in every step of PPP implementation. In addition to PPP, PMAC has been playing a significant role in the management process of large-scale fiscal and SOE projects. In this way, PMAC has played a significant role in public and private infrastructure investment management in Korea as a designated agency for integrated evaluation and management of fiscal, PPP, and SOE projects, and contributed to enhancing the value for money of most infrastructure projects of Korea, regardless of financial sources, and has also been a strong supporter to the Ministry of Economy and Finance of Korea. I hope that this conference would provide us with the venue where all participating countries, including Korea and PPP experts, share policy and implementation experiences. I know that our friends in ESCAP and CPPP Center, China PPP Center, have tirelessly spent the year to successfully host the network meetings. National borders close, but virtual spaces open. As virtual meetings are becoming the new normal, I hope this network continues to flourish. In closing, now that the time is moving towards to the end of the year and to joyful holidays, I must confess that I do miss the warmth of shaking hands with you. I much hope to see you in person very soon. Please enjoy the conference ahead, and thank you again for your attendance. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kim, for your very smooth and very well appreciated remarks. I did not want to interrupt you earlier, as I wasn't sure if it was just my side, but I noticed maybe your camera may not have been on. So, but kindly do keep it on, and also especially for the upcoming group photo. But did not want to interrupt you earlier in case it was only my side. But other than that, thank you so much, Dr. Kim, for your special remarks. In mobilizing much needed financial resources, as well as to coordinate a more comprehensive multilateral response. So in this regard, it is now my honor to request Ms. Yang Jiamin, Deputy Director General of the China PPP Center, to share her views. Ms. Yang, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Daniel. Dear Dr. Tantip Saphajini and Dr. Hyundai Kim, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure to participate in the 6th meeting of Infrastructure Financing and the PPP Network of Asia and the Pacific. First of all, on behalf of China PPP Center, please allow me to express our sincere appreciation to ESCAP and also PMAC for your great efforts in organizing this meeting. During the past 3 years, I've been seeing the increasingly important role of the network as a multilateral platform in facilitating multilateral and bilateral exchanges and cooperation on PPP within and beyond this region. The member states of the network have increased from 24 at the beginning in 2018 to more than 50 now. With more partners, enhanced cooperation and increased influence, ESCAP's leading and coordinating role has benefited the member states and deserve high praise. Currently, all countries in the world are fighting for better recovery while containing the pandemic and addressing the climate change. Infrastructure investment is considered as an important stimulus instrument by many countries, and the PPP model is well recognized as an essential one. In the case of China, 1,200 projects from 19 sectors all over the country had their PPP contracts signed with an investment of $422.3 billion from January 2020 to October 2021. They have played a very positive role in restoring economy during the COVID-19 pandemic. China's practice shows that PPP can promote high-quality infrastructure development, improve people's livelihood, enhance environmental protection, alleviate poverty, and strengthen sustainable development. China PPP Center would like to share our experience and lessons with other member states through this wonderful platform to facilitate PPP development in this region to achieve United Nations 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. I'm pleased to see that PMAC will share Korea's PPP practice and experience at this meeting. China PPP Center delegation visited PMAC in 2014 when we initiated its new round of PPP development. China PPP Center also signed MOU with PMAC in 2015 and have benefited a lot. I believe Korea's PPP practice and experience is valuable to all the audience. Moreover, I noticed that there are many participants from private sectors and financial institutions. Some member states will introduce their infrastructure project proposals, and some speakers will share their expertise. I do hope all of you could find out business opportunities and gain useful information through this meeting. Finally, I wish this meeting a great success. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Yang, for the insightful speech. Distinguished speakers and panelists, before we move forward, and as a memento of our discussion today, we would like to take a group photo. So I would like to kindly ask the presenters to turn on your camera at this time. And Benny, please let me know when we have got a couple of good shots in.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Benny. So with this, let's continue our discussion and hear from some very eminent speakers that have gathered here today. Taken together, these eminent speakers encompass an extensive range of experiences and depth of expertise. There will be 3 sessions in total. After each presentation, the floor will be open for a short interactive Q&A session, and there may be opportunities for further observations. At this point in time, I also invite any participants to feel free to leave your comments in the chat box, and we will also monitor them. So with this, on our first session, session 1, we will invite member states' PPP units to present investment projects to potential investors to improve the bankability and sustainability of their infrastructure proposals. For this, I am very pleased to welcome Mr. Xu Fei, Director of Information Management Department at the China PPP Center, to moderate this session. Mr. Xu Fei, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Daniel. Good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You are warmly welcome to join session 1, Member States Infrastructure Investment Project Proposals. I'm Xu Fei from China PPP Center, and happy to see many older friends in the audience. In this session, PPP units of the Philippines, Bangladesh, Kyrgyzstan, and Mongolia will present investment projects to potential investors to improve the bankability and the sustainability of their infrastructure projects. I believe their presentations are very attractive to the audience. Dear speakers, I know you have prepared fantastic presentation, so ESCAP team gives preference to this session with 70 minutes. I would kindly request each presentation is no more than 15 minutes. After the presentation, we will open the floor for Q&A for 5 to 10 minutes. During the session, if our online audience have any questions to the speakers, please leave your names and the name of your organization in the chat box. I will call you in consequence in Q&A. Now, I would like to invite the first speaker, Ms. Maria Lerma Advincula, Director of Project Development Service, PPP Center of the Philippines. The Philippines has good PPP practice and PPP program. What is current status? Now, Ms. Maria, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Let me just flash on the screen my presentation. Kindly advise if it's already on the screen.
Yes, it's visible.
Thank you. So good afternoon once again. My name is Lerma Advincula. I'm here to present about the Philippine PPP program and investment opportunities. Thank you for inviting the Philippines to this forum. So similar to most developing countries, the Philippines continues to be severely affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. In 2020, the Philippine economy shrank by 9.5% in terms of full-year GDP. This year, however, economic activity has been gradually recovering as GDP in the third quarter of 2021 expanded for the second straight quarter, driven mainly by consumer and government spending. To achieve and accelerate the country's full recovery back to pre-pandemic levels and subsequent growth prospects, 3 crucial policy actions need to be executed. One of these policy actions is the full implementation of the Economic Recovery Program. As part of this recovery program, the Philippine government is continuing its gains on infrastructure development, with PPPs as one of the infrastructure delivery mechanism. Infrastructure development is key to economic development, especially at this time when economic recovery and resiliency are paramount. Investment in key infrastructures such as transportation, tourism, digital connectivity, water, and also in social infrastructure such as health, sanitation, provide the much needed stimulus to job creation and economic activities. Because of the presence of a robust private sector, the Philippine government is able to tap into private sector financing through PPPs to deliver and implement the much needed infrastructure development of the country. While there is the usual government financing, the government appropriations and borrowings available to finance infrastructure development, the Philippine government considers PPPs as a viable option, as a viable delivery mechanism for the much needed infrastructure. Notably, last year, 2020, majority of the government's spending on infrastructure are on PPPs, underscoring that PPPs play a vital role in the country's economic development. In tapping and accessing private sector financing and expertise through PPPs, the Philippine PPP Center is at the forefront of facilitating and implementing the country's Philippine PPP program. Our main mandate revolves around projects, capacity building, and policy formulation. In relation to projects, we have a dedicated team of project officers providing technical assistance in all stages of project cycle, from conceptualization, development, procurement, award, and implementation. We also advocate for policy reforms and issuances to enhance the enabling environment for PPPs for both the public and private sectors. We also design, formulate, and conduct capacity building activities to improve the skills and confidence of our implementing agencies in doing PPPs. In our capacity building mandate, we advocate for learning by doing approach, whereby at the project level, the implementing agencies are very much involved in the development process. So this is a snapshot of the pipeline of PPP projects that we are monitoring and at the same time assisting in the development. As of September 30, 2021, we have a total of 183 awarded projects that are being monitored and are in our database. As of the same date, we have 65 projects in the pipeline in varying degrees of development. As to these 65 projects in the pipeline, the composition are as follows. There are 45 PPPs at the national level. So these are PPP projects being undertaken and developed by implementing agencies at the national level, such as in the sectors of transportation, health, vertical infrastructure, and IT system. We are also seeing a lot of PPPs at the local level. So these are PPPs being implemented by our local government units and local implementing agencies. Notably, these are in areas or sectors of water supply and sanitation, solid management, transportation, and tourism. So a cross-cutting goal of SGDs is SGD 9, which aims to build resilient infrastructure, promote inclusive and sustainable industrialization, and foster innovation. To help increase access to capital, allow off-balance sheet borrowing, increase innovation, and help transfer risk, the role of PPPs will be crucial. In developing PPP projects, assessment of sustainability issues and incorporation of adequate sustainability measures are ensured. So through PPPs, our government, the Philippine government, is able to tap into the private sector's expertise and innovative technology and solutions to develop, operate, and maintain sustainable infrastructures. PPPs also allows access to private sector financing that support sustainable infrastructure. So in the succeeding slides, I will just give a quick run through of the projects that are in our pipeline and how they support the commitment to attain the UN SDGs by 2030. So just a quick look, there are transport and logistics projects that are aligned with SDGs 8, 9, and 11. So these are projects that are under development and one is for approval. There's the Metro Cebu Expressway, a port project, a road rehabilitation project in the north of the Philippines, and a port project in the Mindanao. We also have healthcare projects that are aligned with SDG 3. Notably, these 4 projects are already at the approval stage, awaiting approval by our approving authorities in order to proceed to procurement. I will highlight one of these health projects later on, the UPPGH Diliman project. In water, sanitation, and solid waste management, we also have quite a number of projects that are, some are under evaluation because they are unsolicited proposals, and some are still in the completion stage of the feasibility study. I will highlight one water project as well later, which is in the Visayas area of the Philippines, the Ormoc City Water Supply System project. So, as mentioned, these are the projects that I wish to highlight because they are already in advanced stages. They are already in the approval stage, awaiting approval by our approving authorities in order to proceed to procurement. First is the Ormoc City Water Supply Project. So, despite the abundance of raw water supply services in Ormoc City, concerns remain on water accessibility, availability, sufficiency, and quality. The local government of Ormoc City endeavors to address these concerns through a comprehensive water supply system project, which will encompass sourcing, construction of water supply and filtration facilities, assessment of hydropower generation potential, system upgrade, and operations and maintenance of the entire system. So the scope of private sector participation for this project covers the design, financing, construction, operation, and maintenance of a level 3 water supply system to consumers in all 110 barangays of Ormoc City. The project cost indicative at this point is at 5.77 billion pesos. In relation to resiliency, the project's climate resiliency measures include the use of surface water as a more sustainable water source, instead of exhausting the diminishing groundwater in the city. This is aligned, of course, with the UNICEF's global strategy for water, sanitation, and hygiene. There are also inclusions of solutions to address or mitigate disaster and climate change risk that would figure or would be included in the minimum performance standards and specifications to be attached to the PPP contract to be signed with the private sector partner. So as mentioned, the project is aligned with SDG Goal 6 of ensuring availability and sustainable management of water and sanitation for all. The next project that I wish to highlight is the University of the Philippines Philippine General Hospital. This project involves the development of the Philippine General Hospital in Diliman to be located within the main campus of the premier University of the Philippines. It's the country's national university. The project is comprised of a multi-story tertiary care hospital, outpatient services, medical research center, as well as a school of medicine, hospice, and ancillary facilities. The private sector participation shall cover the design, build, construction, financing, and maintenance of the buildings, procurement, installation, and maintenance of major medical and IT infrastructure, and the facilities management services. Clinical services and all medical teaching and research activities are excluded from the private sector scope and will be retained by the government. The indicative project cost is at 21.3 billion pesos. The private sector partner will expect to receive a monthly performance-based availability payment from the start of the operation of the facility to the termination of the contract. On climate resiliency, the project's building design incorporates climate resilience features such as seismic resilient foundations of the main hospital building. The project has also been assessed to have low susceptibility to climactical hazards. In addition, the private proponent is expected to conduct a detailed terrestrial assessment to identify trees that will be directly affected by the project. In relation to sustainability, for this project, the UP-PGH Diliman will provide services that are accessible to the poor and that are not readily available in other public hospitals. In addition, it is envisioned to be a flagship research hospital, thereby complementing and enhancing the capabilities of the existing PGH in Manila. And this is part of a longer-term strategy to develop general hospitals facilities around the Philippines that will serve as the hubs of clinical expertise. So through these features, the UP-PGH Diliman project shall contribute to bridging the gap in public healthcare infrastructure and improving access to quality healthcare, especially among the poor and the vulnerable groups. This is aligned with SGD Goal 3, which is to ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for all at all ages. The project aims to help reduce incidences of maternal and infant mortality, as well as incidences of mortality from non-communicable diseases. That ends my presentation, and please feel free to ask your questions or clarifications later. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Maria, for your remarkable presentation. In my view, the experience of the Philippines is valuable for other developing countries, and your PPP investment opportunities can draw high attention of potential investors. As to capacity building, I fully agree with you that learning by doing is very important. Okay, next, I would like to have Dr. Najmul Sayadat, Director of Investment Promotion PPP Authority, Prime Minister's Office, Bangladesh. Bangladesh government pays attention to PPP. What actions have been taken by the government? Dr. Najmul, you have the floor, please.
Thank you. One question. This is Shubhamay. Daniel, are we doing the questions now or at the end of the sessions?
Go ahead, Mr. Shife.
We can go ahead now?
After all the presentations, okay. Then we open the Q&A session. Okay, thank you.
Fine, perfect, okay.
Thank you. I am going to present my slides first, then I will discuss. Greetings from PPP Authority, Prime Minister's Office, Government of Bangladesh. I would like to show my deep gratitude to ESCAP, KDI, and China PPP Center for organizing, co-organizing this event. Respected Shife and dear presenters from Philippines, Kyrgyzstan, and Mongolia, and my distinguished audience. Good morning to you all. My name is Najmul Sayadat. I work at the PPP Authority as one of the directors in PPP Authority. And I would like to show very briefly PPP governance system in Bangladesh, as well as two projects which is SDG aligned and which have investment opportunities in very near future. So indeed, PPP has a strong footing on high-level political commitment. Our Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, is very much interested to have PPP in highways, multipurpose bridge, power station, airport, seaports, and her vision has been translated into our 100-year Delta Plan, 20-year perspective plan, 5-year plan, annual development program, an SDG financing strategy in such a way that to become a middle income country by 2021 and a developed country by 2041, we need around 30% of our annual development program need to be implemented through PPP, as well as to achieve sustainable development goals by 2030. We need additional 5.6% financing through PPP. I will elaborate these 2 points in next 2 slides. First of all, if you would like to sustain our growth at around 8% to become a middle income country by 2021 and developed country by 2041, we need around 14.51 billion US dollar infrastructure investment, and around 30% comes to 4.35 billion per year. So it is a huge number indeed. And in case of SDG financing target, if you would like to achieve the goals by 2030, we need a 928 billion additional funding, and it is becoming 66.32 billion per year. It has been divided into domestic financing as well as external financing component, as well as PPP. We have found that 5.5% needs to come through PPP route in getting achieving SDG goals. So I would like to show you in very brief about the project PPP project delivery to the private partner. First of all, contracting agency prepare project proposal and send it to Line Ministry. Line Ministry send it to PPP authority for scrutiny. After scrutiny, it goes to the Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs for in-principle approval. Indeed, in-principle approval, implementing agency engaged in conducting detailed feasibility study, and based on that feasibility study, prepared bid documents and contract documents. They send it these documents to PPP authority for review and comments. After getting review and comments, they go for bidding. And after selecting preferred bidder, the PPP contract goes to Line Ministry. Line Ministry take legal vetting and send the Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs for final approval of the PPP contract. When it is approved, then contracting authority as well as selected private investor sign the contract. And then after condition precedence, implementations of the project is taking place. So now we have around 79 projects amounting 29 billion US dollar in our pipeline. If we would like to show stage-wise PPP, then we have one project right now at operation stage, around 6 projects is construction stage, 10 project has been contract signed, and other 13 project in procurement stage. We have 27 project feasibility stage, and other 20 no activities has not taken place. And our largest number of project is in transport sector. It covers rail, road, port, bridge, and others, as well as second largest pipeline projects in industry sector, in which around 17 projects are from textiles mills. So what are the projects are in operation and construction stage? We have one project at operation stage, which is hemodialysis project. And then we have 2 jetties as Mongla Port, which is under construction stage, and it will be going operation in next June. Dhaka Elevated Expressway mega project is expected to open the first phase by end of 2021. And Dhaka Expressway project, 48-kilometer fast expressway PPP project, has started its construction phase. And the water supply sewerage drainage system for solid waste management in Purvachal New Town, this project has also started its construction phase. And satellite township at Mirpur is a housing sector project and started construction. So in this presentation, I will show only 2 projects, that is development of central effluent treatment plant in Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujib Shilpanagar, as well as development of integrated wastewater management system for Gazipur City Corporation. This project is nearly ready for bidding, in a sense that one project has just got its detailed feasibility study completed, and another project has got bid documents prepared right now. So first project is CETP at Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujib Shilpanagar. You know that Bangladesh economic zone is developing several economic zone, and one of the biggest one is Mireshwarai Chattogram on 1420 acres of land to promote industrialization in the country and to mitigate the negative environmental impacts of this larger scale industrialization and ensure sustainable industrial growth. Beja has taken initiative of establishing a CETP as an integral part of this initiative. So definitely it comes with the several SDG goals, as it is cross-cutting in our view, that clean water, sanitation, industry, innovation and infrastructure, and others. So now we'd like to give little more detail about the project. The project size is 1,420 acres, and it is divided into two parts, Zone 2A and Zone 2B. The project is located at the middle of two zones with 18 acres of land. And the major components is the project will establish a fluent network around 18.1 kilometer, as well as establish a treatment facility, that's the central effluent treatment plant with 48 million liter per day. And the project cost is around 22 million US dollar. The project is going to be delivered to private partner for 15 years, including 2 years construction period. So the private partner shall operate the project for 13 years. The interesting point is that the project is going to be delivered to the private partner on government pays availability pays basis, in which the private partner will receive its payment from Beja during the operational maintenance period upon delivery of services. More importantly, important for the international investors, that in case of international partner, the payment has to be made in foreign currency, as well as if it requires, there may have opportunity of giving sovereign guarantee, as well as finally, I'd like to tell that the procurement will take two bidding stages, and we are going to float RFQ for shortlisting interested private investors. Our second project is development of integrated wastewater management system for Gazipur City Corporation. You know, the City Corporation is a formation under the local government administration of Bangladesh to regulate the city area, and this comes under the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development. In this project, there are 8 zones in Gazipur City Corporation, and the project by this project there will have two coverage of 2 zones, Zone 1 and Zone 4, Tongi and Gazipur. I would like to explain the background of this project and the necessity of this project in this slide, that right now we do not have that much sewerage treatment facilities, around 60 mld of untreated sewage discharge into the groundwater, and water bodies. Poor sanitation facilities exist at most of the household level, poorly designed septic tanks resulting in percolation of sewage into the water table, and also others connected problems. So keeping above situations in mind, Gazipur City Corporation, Government of Bangladesh has taken this initiative to implement this wastewater management project in Bangladesh, and thus it is also a cross-cutting project which also includes sustainable cities and communities goal, good health and well-being goal, clean water and sanitation goals, including others. I would like to show you the major components of this project. This project has also 2 major components: the development of sewage treatment plants as well as sewage networks. And 2 sewage treatment plant will be established through this project with 56 mld capacity, as well as 137 kilometers of sewage network will be established in a highly dense area in Tongi zone. And the another component is that the sparsely populated area, there will have fecal sludge collection system and fecal sludge treatment plant. And this total estimated project cost is around 82 million US dollar. The project is also going to be very interesting for the international investors. IFC is engaged as a transaction advisor for this project, and feasibility study is just now completed. They will go for preparing bid documents soon, but by this time we have got what are the project structure is going to be, that it is going to be in capacity buy-in type, that whereas government shall pay around 40% of capital expenditure during the construction period to the private investors, as well as it is going to be availability payments mechanism. So the rest of the balance of capital expenditure and operational management expenses will be given to the private developer as a fixed availability payment, and the government shall collect the charges of sewerage treatment, as well as the project is also for 15 years, including 3 years construction period. So these two projects shall be very much interesting to the international community, international investors to be engaged, as it has confirmed revenue coming through the government, and having that is the bankability we are expecting is very good. And why you need to come to Bangladesh and what others say about the Bangladesh. McKinsey and Company, Bangladesh is next China. JP Morgan, Bangladesh is one of the frontier 5 economies. Goldman Sachs, the next 11 Bangladesh among the 11 nations have high economic potentials. PwC, 28th and 23rd largest economy of the world by 2030 and 2041. And UBS, financing institutions, the Bangladesh will be the 12th economic power of the world in 2050. In a sense, Bangladesh is growing, be a part of it. If you have any questions, then definitely I'll be able to answer. And I once again thank you, organizer, for this event. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Najamus, for your wonderful presentation. I'm pleased to know the fast PPP development in Bangladesh in recent years. I believe the ready-to-bid PPP project can attract potential investors in the audience. Thank you. Now, I would like to invite Mr. Ulan Daniel Bakov, Director of PPP Center, Ministry of Investment, Kyrgyzstan. He will introduce some interesting project proposals. Now I give you the floor, Ulan. Sorry, Ulan, you are mute. Ulan, it's your floor. Sorry, you are mute. Could you open your mic?
Yeah. Ulan, you are not mute, but we do not hear you. Probably something with your microphone.
Sorry?
No sound.
Yes, we cannot hear you. No, no sound.
I would suggest to go with the next presenter, and we will try to settle the technical issues, Ulan, in the meantime.
Yes. Okay. So next, let's invite Mr. Yasuki Inkatufshin, Director of Investment Research Center, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Mongolia. He will introduce one but larger size PPP project proposal, one expressway across Mongolia. Mr. Yasuki, now you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Shan and Daniel, for today. My greetings to every distinguished guest and participants and presenters and friends who are all present virtually here today. I'm going to go ahead and open my presentation before I go into a little forward. So please. So I wonder if you guys can see my PowerPoint presentation very clear?
Yes. Could you please? Yes. Full screen is better. Thank you.
It's on the full screen now. So first of all, I would like to thank ESCAP for organizing today's excellent event and providing us with the opportunity to find opportunities as well as to share views on a range of issues. Today, I'm actually going to share with you some information on one particular project in a very detailed manner. It is a toll-based expressway project, which is to replace the current Mongolian part of AH3 line. And Mongolia is, of course, very proud to be one of the founding members of the network. So we want to contribute to the network by creating a beneficial climate for international transport in the region and overall improving connectivity and trade facilitation in our beloved region. And of course, it's very much in line with our sustainable development goals. So the current traffic on Mongolian part of AH3 is not at its absolute peak, I would say, due to the condition of the road within Mongolia. But upon the completion of the highway, given the distance and shortcut, and according to some of our data, the traffic will be hugely increased upon the completion of the highway. And one of the other reasons to materialize this project is that the current railroad system in Mongolia cannot haul all of the goods and materials due to its capacity, which is causing a bottleneck for current and potential trade flow in the region, whether it's if it's transit or import and export, especially the trade between Russia and China. Furthermore, even goods that are traveling between Northeast Asia, Russia, and even Europe. And they will have a more alternate possible route, which is fast and safe upon the completion of our project. And the investment conditions for this project for now is really flexible at this point. We are favoring BOT or DBOT model of investment, and further conditions can also be discussed between the investors and relevant public authorities of Mongolia. The project itself has gained a lot of favor from the government, so we should have pretty good backings and good support from the government. And myself and my department, the International Research Center, will help facilitate meetings with government officials, public authorities, etc., for further discussions and proposals from the investors. So a little bit about the toll revenues before I start the whole presentation. In terms of toll revenues, I've been looking at some case studies, and some European countries such as Spain, Portugal, France, and Italy have used the same model. They made use of concession procurement, where public authority or the government grants a long-term right to a private organization, the concessionaire, to build and operate and maintain the infrastructure. And so far, they've been quite successful at it. According to another study by Professor Morten Welde at Norwegian University of Science and Technology, and a couple of other researchers and professors from different universities, they've made this research on transportation economics. And according to this research, the tolls can cover all or part of the building costs of the new infrastructure. And this research goes on and says that the private capital may contribute to the needed investment through lump sum payments, and the tolls from cars and trucks provide majority of the capital. And this is only in terms of tolls. Besides the toll revenue, there are possibilities that the concessionaire can receive benefits from various roadside stations, such as gas stations, convenience stores, cafeterias, etc. And like I said, the condition is very flexible at this point, and we are ready to facilitate more discussions with potential investors to come up together with solutions to see that their investments actually pay back. The feasibility, I would say pre-feasibility study of the project has been made, and the concise version has been distributed to the Secretariat. And I hope you guys all have a copy by now, especially the investors, if I'm not wrong. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my slides. Okay, please allow me to go ahead and go through a little bit of history background. And as you can see, it's about the T Road. I am sure that these are not coincidence, but the ancient T Road was originated in ancient China and traveled all the way to Europe from China, passing through current capital Mongolia and through Russian Kyakhta, which is almost exact same trajectory as the modern day AH3. And the interesting fact is that the relevant empires throughout the history have collected taxes from travelers and merchants using these roads. So we can see that tolling was a not very uncommon feature still back then. Okay, I'm going to go to the next slide. And again, this project is in line with all the government action plans and programs that we have put forward. For example, the current government aims to improve the comfort driving and road safety, attract foreign investment, trade and transportation facility, robust transit and transportation, freedom of transport. And a little bit of project background internationally to give you a little base information. Mongolia and Russia, China have signed economic corridor program in 2016 on the level of the 3 presidents, and there was an intergovernmental agreement on the international road and transport along the Asian highway network in 2016, of course under ESCAP. And there's also a memorandum of understanding on harmonizing Mongolian Steppe Road Initiative and Chinese BRI initiative, which is signed by both governments of Mongolia and China. And also, this highway project will be part of ESCAP Asian Highway Network AH3, like I mentioned before. And it'll be also a part of Mongolia, Russia, China Economic Corridor Program. A very main line of this corridor program, actually, a Central Road Corridor, and it'll be also part of one of the BRI's 6 corridor, namely China, Mongolia, Russia Economic Corridor, and it's also listed in CAREC 4B. And we have all these other reasons to realize this project and be successful together. There's the economic growth and the growth of trade and integration in our region is just asking for more facilitation and means of transport, and the land infrastructure passing through the landlocked Mongolia is actually one of the main corridors connecting Asia and Europe. And we also have to point out that given the current international situation and other factors, trade and economic cooperation between Russia and China is at, I would say, one of its highest level, let's say. And also that Mongolia's very important neighbors and comprehensive strategic partners, Russia and China, are both aiming to strengthen their economic growth through various economic corridors and infrastructure. Excuse me. So as for this next slide, it's showing the tendency of growing trade relations between the 3 neighboring countries, which is of course Mongolia, Russia, and China. And if you see the performance figure down below, it's constantly growing. But please bear in mind that we are not only talking about our trilateral trade growth within the framework of this project. The important point is to increase the regional trade circulation by adding more routes to the network, so everyone can benefit through this excellent multilateral platform that we are on today. We are seeing that this project will be very important for a post-COVID economic recovery in Asia Pacific, and this will move us. I hope that this will move us closer in order to overcome this difficult situation. And as you can see on the slide, for Mongolia, we are seeing a variety of opportunities to take advantage of our geographical location, to contribute to the regional connectivity, of course, and to become an active participant in the foreign trade network with the countries in the region, while at the same time improving the current state of the overall infrastructure in the country. Some not very good numbers, which I think I should be mentioning today, that Mongolia is ranked 109th of 136 countries according to WEF's competitiveness index of quality roads. And according to the World Bank's LPI index, Mongolia is ranking 130th out of 160 countries. And we believe really much in the present theme of ESCAP, that is moving forward together. So I'll talk more about the specifications of the project. The projected expressway will directly connect Altınbozok, which is the largest border point between Mongolia and Russia, to Zamingud, which is also the biggest border point between Mongolia and China, which both contains pilot-free zones, which we are developing at this moment and will be featuring pretty soon. The expressway will run 187 kilometers from Altınbozok to Zamingud, and we're planning to implement Michino Eki, a government-designated roadside station concept, which has three main aspects, as you can see on the slide. Besides the roadside stations that the investors can benefit, like I've mentioned before this slide, we are seeing that the construction stage will employ more than 10,000 local workers and foreign contractors during the construction stage, and more than 2,000 staff will maintain the expressway after completion. And beside the cargo transportation, the express will, of course, also promote tourism in the region, and the design standards are up to international road designs, namely international quality 1B grade transit main road with demarcation line. So, like I said, we have all this backings and favor from the government, prime ministers and presidents of Mongolia. So we shall have a pretty good support from the public authorities and relevant ministries for this project. The feasibility study and the design of the road have adapted the very unique natural, climatic, and social and economic conditions of Mongolia, and the detailed design drawings are underway. So more about the specifications of the project. As you can see, we have on the feasibility study, we have two main routes, which one will pass the western point through the capital city, and the other version will pass through the eastern point of the capital city. And in accordance with Chapter 9 of the Mongolian Road Designer Standard, it'll be also accorded with the international standards as well. So the parameters of the cross sections, I'll mention a few numbers. Numbers of traffic flows will be 2 on each side. Number of total lanes will be 4. Single lane width will be 3.75 meters. The horizontal slope of the carriageway will be 2%. Horizontal slope of the rim will be 4%. The shoulder width will be 0.75 meters paved on the left side. On the right side, that'll be 2.5 meters paved and 0.5 gravel shoulder. There'll be barrier between two sides, which is 2.10 meters to 15.8 meters, depending on the road. The speed limit will be 80 and 80 to 100 meters. So here we can see a more detailed cost estimation according to the pre-feasibility study that we have done. We're looking at total investment of 4.4 billion US dollars at this current moment. And some highway facilities we're planning. We're going to have four tunnels with total length of 3,000 meters, and we're going to have concrete culverts 32, 28, and there's going to be 21 total bridges according to the feasibility study, which the total length totals in 1,820 meters. And there's going to be 21 interchange, and there's going to be 6 railroad bypass bridges. And of course, we have the green responsibility, so we have planned wildlife bypass, 30 wildlife bypasses that are all 9 to 24 meters long. And there'll be a highway fence, total of 1,100 kilometers, service facilities every 100 kilometers, rest areas for every 50 kilometers. And of course, traffic control and safety control will comply with the European standards and has main control center and 7 sub-centers along the road and 456 control cameras. And as shown on the previous slide, we are looking at total investment of 4.4 billion US dollars with internal rate of return of 9.25%. And according to our data, the road will pay for itself starting from its 12th year of operation. And during the construction stage, it's projected to employ 10,000 workers, and upon completion, there's going to be 2,000 staff maintaining the road every other day. And all major construction materials such as cement, steel, limestone, and other mineral powder will be furnished by domestic factories and quarries. This will significantly reduce the cost of the project. And since we have distributed the concise feasibility study to the participants, I will actually not try to take a whole 17 minutes presenting one project. The concise version of the feasibility study is in various languages, I believe in Russian and Chinese languages besides the English version. So we have also a much bigger full version of the feasibility study, but only in Mongolian at this current moment. And all of the data above might be subject to change according to different feasibility studies required by different international banks and financial organizations. But we believe that given our experience in implementing various concession roads and projects financed by various international financial organizations, the current feasibility study should be quite accurate. And this will actually be the end of my short presentation, and I really hope that we will hear from some of the potential investors. Like I said, the condition for the contract are very, very flexible at this point, and we're more than open to hold honest discussion with investors, and if serious, we can facilitate meetings with public authorities and government officials at preferred level. And we're also actually open to talk to the parties and distinguished experts who are willing to give us valuable advice on securing investment. And we have more projects on the line to be financed through PPP format, like dry ports, free zones, etc. Again, obtaining a right to this project means building and operating the very main highway on the very main economic corridor between Mongolia, Russia, and China that connects Asia to Europe. So thank you very much for all of your attention. I wish all of you a very good health during this challenging and hard times. And of course, a good fortune, success, and prosperity. Thank you. So if there's any additional questions regarding this project, please, you can send us an email to the email address shown on the slide. So thank you very much, everyone, for your attention, and I hope to see you all soon again on a different occasion and a different event. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Yasuki. And thank you for your the detailed, excellent introduction. No doubt, this expressway is very important for Mongolia. I think the large contractor, investors, and the financiers in the audience will have interest in this project. Thank you. Now let's go back to Kyrgyzstan. Mr. Ulan Danilbekov, I give the floor to you.
Thank you, Mr. Sip.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Could you share your screen?
Mr. Yasuki, could you please stop sharing?
Sorry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sife. I hope my presentation is visible to delegates of this wonderful meeting. First, let me express my gratitude to delegates and appreciate to the organizers of this SDG Investment Fair. My name is Ulan Danilbekov. I'm a Deputy Director of the PPP Center of the Kyrgyz Republic, Kyrgyzstan. So I would like to share with my presentation in a very short time and to share about PPP mechanisms in the Kyrgyz Republic and also about operation of our center. As you know, PPP Center is in Kyrgyz Republic is established in last year, and this year our president, Mr. Japarov, signed a new version of PPP law with enhancing of the coordination functions of the main authoritative bodies as the Ministry of Economy and PPP Center. Now, in line, we have more than 55 PPP projects with total estimate cost more than $1 billion. And we established a PPP center last year, and with the adoption of a new law, we have increase of PPP projects quantity from 29 to 55 this year. As you can see, PPP law first was adopted in 2012, but the main active phase of development of PPP mechanisms in Kyrgyz Republic started from the last year, 2019. As a new law established the application of PPP in the Kyrgyz Republic, and the main spheres where we develop our projects is the transport sphere, energy, and social and environment. We also have identified the spheres for not using PPP regarded with the privatization and public procurement, and also not applicable in a subsoil use. Also, for enhancing the initiation of the PPP projects from the private sector, we have established a private initiative article in the law with the rights for interested parties to initiate private project proposals or structures for the state public partners with the approval and rejection mechanisms. As the end of procedure slides, I would like to mention about projects with more than 1 billion som, which is equal to $12 million. And in case of private initiatives, PPP agreement can be signed through the direct negotiations. From this slide, I would like to start about our project line. And as I mentioned before, we have 55 projects in 2021, and main spheres as a transport sphere, healthcare, customer and logistics, education, sport, energetics, and agriculture. During these last 2 years, main active phase, we have signed 3 PPP agreements in different pilot projects as the establishment of hemodialysis centers with the support of IFC, and the winner of the tender was Fresenius Medical Care, a company from Germany. So this project is consumes fixed service payments from the government for the hemodialysis services. And the second project was integration of electronic ticketing in public transport of the capital of city Bishkek. The winner of the tender was a BBC company from Switzerland, and agreement was signed in 2019. And also the last project we signed is with a local company as Burana for the construction of the cinema children called Kızıl Kırgızistan. So as you can see, the attraction of private investment has a diverse character. We try out to attract investments as local and also as foreign investments in equal way. And Kyrgyz Republic has has settled a basic experience for development of PPP projects, and it has realized 3 pilot projects as shown in this slide. From now on, I will start to present projects on different stages, and the first project is the modernizations of the airport, Manase International Airport, and in accordance with the National Development Strategy 2018-2040, we try to modernize this set of projects within this PPP project mechanism, and the public partner as the Ministry of Transport and Communication is together with Ministry of Economy has signed the agreement for the transaction advisory services with the IFC, and nowadays this project is under development of the accurate feasibility study. So within these projects, Kyrgyz Republic is trying to modernize one main project, which is airport, which is located in the capital Bishkek city, and has and to screen other airports for the development within this project. Other 11 airports located in different areas of the country. The second project that I would like to show is the construction of the custom and logistic complex in Albashi district. It's in the northern region. So we try to develop this project, which includes the construction of a custom terminal and custom related infrastructure near Torga checkpoint. This custom logistics center will operate with near the border between China and the Kyrgyz Republic, and also it will operate with goods and also agriculture products with the local region, and also goods for importing from the People's Republic of China. So the accurate feasibility study was adopted by the public partner. Now the project status is going on a bidding stage. Soon, together with the public partner, we're going to publish a request for qualifications for interested companies. So requirement investments cost about around estimated at $30 million. We also, from the government, identified a public partner for state custom services, and duration of agreement will be 25 years. The next project is in the sphere of medicines. So installation of CT scanners in public healthcare institutions. So in order to make available high quality medical services in the regions of the country, we try to sign a PPP contract with a private partner for installation of CT scans in the already prepared centers in 6 locations of the country. So these centers will be inside of the main regional hospitals, and the public partner will be directly Ministry of Health of the Kyrgyz Republic. This project has a small cost as a 2.4 million, and with a 15-year of duration of PPP contract. And nowadays we are planning to publish a request for qualifications to put it in a bidding process for attracting interested companies. Construction of 10 preschools in Bishkek. The mayor office of the Bishkek is trying to intending to realize the second PPP project in their experience, and City Hall has identified the 10 main locations for construction of 10 preschools around the capital city Bishkek, and each school has to be 250 children inside, and City Hall intends to implement this PPP for in the lands, as I mentioned before, allocated by the City Hall. So the feasibility study was developed by the support of our PPP projects preparation fund, and according to the result of the feasibility studies, requirement investments estimated as $40 million with the PPP contract duration for 10 years. It has the same status as we, together with the City Hall, are planning to start working on a bidding process and publish a request for qualifications for interested companies. This was my short presentation. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask, and we are ready to hope that we will to give more, provide more in provide more information about our projects, and in line we also have many other projects to be discussed with interested companies and interested experts to have available opinion, and also for right cooperation in order to achieve sustainable development goals. Thank you very much again, ladies and gentlemen. In this, I would like to end my presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, Ulan, for your remarkable sharing. I think the airport and customs logistics center projects are very significant for Kyrgyzstan's connectivity with other countries, considering Kyrgyzstan is a landlocked country. I hope some of the audience could find business opportunities from your presentation. Now let's go to the Q&A session. In the chat box, I see one question from Mike Ohiani. I think his question goes to Lima. His question is, please introduce how well the private sector recouped their investment. Thank you, Maria.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you, Mike, for that question. For the two projects that I showcased, first, the Ormoc City Water Supply Project. The repayment scheme, indicative repayment scheme for the private sector would be revenues from the water sales. For the PGH Diliman Hospital Project, the repayment scheme to the private sector would be the annual availability payments from the government. So based on our study, the indicative amount of the annual availability payments that the government would be willing to pay to the private sector is in the amount of 4.8 million pesos. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Maria, for your answer to the question. Let me see if there's any questions in. I say another good question to Maria again. How does your PPP center pay for the feasibility studies and the transaction advisory?
Okay. First, I'd like to clarify, the PPP Center is a government agency. As a government agency, our services in project development, so that's like putting together this feasibility study and transaction advisory services, are for free to the implementing agencies. But our team, of course, we are a team of various expertise and, well, mostly are generalists. We get supplement help or support from experts and consultants pursuant to our technical assistance agreement from the Asian Development Bank, whereby there are experts and consultants assigned to assist us in putting together these project studies and assisting our government agencies during the bidding and procurement process. Lastly, we also have what we call a fund, a revolving fund. This is called the PDMF, the Project Development Monitoring Facility. It is a fund that can be tapped by our implementing agency in order to tap local and international experts. The funding for this is, this is a fund that we manage. The center will advance the payment to the consultants in putting together the feasibility studies and providing transaction advisory services. Because it is a revolving fund, it has to be repaid later on. And the repayment is usually by the winning bidder. So once the project has been successfully tendered and bidded, and there is a winning bidder, all project development costs that we advanced would have to be paid by the winning bidder before it can be issued a notice of award for the project.
Okay, thank you very much. Daniel, I'm asking you to give me a few minutes more because there's another question goes to Maria again. What is the payment security? Who is the counterparty paying for the water? Please, in short.
Of course, when we tender this project, we also conduct our own feasibility study, and based on our studies, we present the demand analysis and our financial assessment. We are expecting, of course, the private sector to also conduct its own due diligence. Our project studies would be available to them in order to confirm or validate the demand analysis that we have done, in order for the private sector to come up with its own bid, for example, for the water project. In relation to the security, this is a user fee based project. So I guess that the private sector's own due diligence that there's enough demand and that, water is a necessity, it's always needed, then there would always be demand. So there would be that sort of security that there would be water revenues to be generated from this project.
Okay, thank you very much. Since the 10 is up.
Oh, sir, sorry. Sorry, one last response, because I only responded to the water project. Now, for the hospital project, it's an availability-based payment. So there would be a commitment from the national government that the availability payments, annual availability payments to the private sector would be part of its budget annually, so that there would would address the security for the payment of these availability payments to the private sector. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I see one more question, maybe from Pakistan. Yeah, well, this question goes to Yasuki. I'm sorry, since time is up, I have to close this session. And thank you, all the distinguished speakers. I think the information shared by the 4 speakers is plentiful and valuable. I believe many audience have interest to learn more information about the PPP development in the 4 member states and more information on these project proposals. So please feel free to contact ESCAP team and surf ESCAP website, and even contact our distinguished 4 speakers for more information. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. I would like to give the floor back to you, Daniel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shifei, for your excellent moderation, and to the respected country presenters as well for the very informative presentation. I also welcome, I see we've got one question addressed in Mongolia. I welcome Mr. Akushin to directly respond in the comments. And otherwise, also feel free to reach out to us at ESCAP, where we have our main infrastructure email that you can direct your questions to, and we can relay them to the respective presenters as well. Happy to connect. So I will now like to continue with the next session. This session is dedicated to our co-host, the Public and Private Infrastructure Investment Management Center, PMAC, under Korea Development Institute, KDI, to share experiences on Korea's experiences on PPPs, with a special focus on transport and education sectors. In addition, some financial issues and the government's responses will also be introduced. So let me now give the floor to Dr. Hyun Park, Dean of International School of Urban Sciences, University of Seoul. Dr. Park, you have the floor.
Thanks, Daniel. Can you hear me?
Yes, clearly.
Okay,
thank you.
Yeah. Good afternoon from Seoul. First of all, congratulate the ESCAP, PMAC, and China for successfully arranging this important event. When I was working at PMAC back in 2007, I had the pleasure to co-organize high-level business forum at the first Asia-Pacific Ministerial Conference on PPP hosted by ESCAP and the Korean Ministry of Economy and Finance. I'm happy to join this event as a moderator. This session too is designed to share the PPP experience of Korea. Korea has one of the biggest PPP program in the world, with more than 750 PPP projects with over 100 billion US dollars. Actually, the annual budget of the Korean government on the infrastructure investment is about 20 billion or 25 billion US dollars. So the $100 billion of the PPP investment accumulated amount actually is equivalent to a 4 or 5 years full infrastructure investment of the government budget. But the size of the PPP program in Korea does not mean that Korea's PPP is a success story. Rather, Korea has experienced a series of trial and error. So there are many lessons from the experience of Korea on the PPP. Today, we have 3 speakers, 2 from PMAC and 1 from EDUMAC. One of the features of the Korea's PPP is extensive role of the PPP unit in PPP project selection, as well as technical assistance to the PPP implementation agencies in the public sector. The PPP was introduced in 1994 in Korea, but even after the legislation of the PPP, there was only a few PPP projects implemented. One of the critical challenges was a lack of the available capacity within the government. So the government decided to create a PPP unit. And the PPP unit not only helps the implementation agencies in the government, but also reviews the PPP proposals and conduct researches on critical policy issues on PPP. So I think PPP unit, PMAC, and EDGMAX are in a good position to share their institutional memory about the PPP policies in Korea. So in terms of timing, our goal is to finish this session within 60 minutes. Each speaker has 15 minutes for their presentation, and the Q&A session follows. The audience may ask questions after all three presentations, or you can leave your questions at the chat box. So without further ado, I'd like to invite our first speaker. The first speaker is Dr. Sungmo Gu. He is a specialist of a PPP policy team at the PMAC. Actually, his background is a transportation planner. So he has a lot of experience in reviewing the transportation project proposals. So today he would like to talk about the risk sharing schemes of the transportation project today. Okay, Dr. Gu.
Thank you, Dr. Park. Hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to this meaningful event. My name is Sungmo Gu. I'm from KDI PMAC, and I'm going to give a presentation on risk sharing models and cases of transportation PPP project in South Korea. I'm going to cover 4 subtopics today: the history of PPP transportation project in Korea, demand risk sharing policies in Korea, cases of risk sharing models in Korea, and the conclusion. First, let's take a look at the history of PPP transportation project in Korea. Korea has achieved rapid economic growth since the 1970s. In this period, problems with national economic losses and reduced competitiveness have occurred, such as increased traffic congestion costs and logistic costs due to insufficient infrastructure. In response, Korea introduced PPP by enacting the PPP law in 1994 to secure substantial transportation infrastructure and avoid insufficient government expenditure. Since then, Korea PPP have grown, amounting to a total investment cost of about $100 billion. Korea's PPP investment has mainly been made in the transportation facility sector. The amount of investment in PPP projects related to road and railroads account for 63% of the total amount of PPP investment. This trend continued to this day. The transportation projects in Korea are mainly implemented under the BTO model. This is a user payment method that collects user fees to recover investment costs. Transportation PPPs in Korea has been receiving both positive and negative reviews. For the positive side, Korea's national competitiveness have been strengthened by providing essential infrastructure in a timely manner and benefiting the Korean public. On the other hand, PPP projects require higher user fees than conventional projects. They have also placed a huge financial burden upon the government due to the minimum revenue guarantee, MRG. This negative reviews is closely related to the demand risk. This is because less revenue than expected was generated as the demand forecasting of the concession agreement. And the demand after the project actually started was very different. Since the demand forecast includes a lot of assumptions, no matter how sophisticated the prediction is, there exists future uncertainty, which means that demand risk exists. Let's look at the cases of road projects in Korea. As of 2021, there are 24 PPP projects for expressways that have concluded their concession agreements, and 18 of them are already in operation. Comparing the actual measured value and predict value of these 18 PPP project data, the predict value is 72 of the actual measured value. Let's move on to next subtopic, demand risk sharing policies in Korea. There are two ways in which the Korean government has tried to deal with the negative reviews of transportation PPP projects. First, the government has tried to increase the accuracy of the demand forecasts. The feasibility assessment was introduced to verify the demand forecast carried out by the private sector. This procedure can prevent the demand forecasting from being evaluated excessively in advance. In addition, the government improved the reliability and accuracy of demand forecasting regarding basic data by establishing a national transportation database. Second, the government developed various demand risk sharing models of the BTO type. As mentioned above, BTO refers to build, transport, operate, and is regarded as a revenue risk type or user payment method in Korea. The method for allocating demand risk varies from country to country, and Korea has been using BTO, BTO-A, BTO-RS, and the hybrid model of BTO and BTL. In 1994, the PPP Act was enacted, and projects for road, railroad, and port facility were implemented using a BTO model. In 1999, the government introduced the MIG system. As a result, it was successful in attracting private investment and played a major role in Korea's economic recovery. However, as the economy gradually recovered, huge guarantees were needed from the government to make up for MIG applied projects. Accordingly, the government reduced the scope and duration of MIG coverage, and MIG was abolished in 2009. PPP projects were activated for a while. However, after that, the construction industry gradually stagnated, and excessive competition between the private sector led to worsening private profitability. As a result, private investment reduced. So the government began to think, is it possible that the private sector take the entire demand risk alone? Or can the government and the private sector share the risk reasonably? Accordingly, in 2015, the government announced the BTO-RS and BTO-A type. The RS of BTO-RS stands for risk sharing, as the government lowers the risk of the private sector by sharing the project risk. The A of BTO-A stands for adjusted, as the government reduced the risk of the private sector by preserving the minimum operating cost required for the construction and operation of facility. The hybrid of BTO plus BTL type was introduced in 2020 for low revenue projects with large investment and operating costs, such as railroads. And those projects can be officially financed by the government during the operating period. Let's look at the cases of risk-sharing models in Korea. There have been a total of 12 road and railroad projects announced since 2015. We will now take a close look at the 2 road projects. First, the Seochang-Gimpo Expressway project was announced in 2020. The purpose of this project is to establish an alternative road to resolve traffic congestion in the congested section of the Seoul Outer Ring Road. This project has a high level of demand risk due to the high demand elasticity result from merging the expressway with the existing road. The government found that the risk of traffic demand forecasting for this project was high, so it decided to implement this project using the BTOA method through cooperation with the private sector. If this project had been implemented using the BTO method, high return and high user fees would have been set due to the high demand risk. In contrast, the rate of return and user fees are relatively low with the BTOA method. You can see in the figure, the BTOA type divides the level of traffic amount into 3, a government guarantee section, a private loss section, and revenue sharing section. For example, suppose the government guaranteed a traffic volume of 50,000 and the actual traffic volume is 30,000. In this case, it belongs to the section where the government guarantee losses and the compensation equivalent to the shortage of 20,000 is paid to private sector by government. Alternatively, if the actual traffic volume is 55, it belongs to 55,000. It belongs to the private losses section in green part. The private sector lost 5,000 traffic volume, and they have to endure the loss. Second, we have the Seoul Dongbu Underground Expressway project. This project connects Gangnam and Gangbu of Seoul, which is capital city of Korea. This project has 2 purposes. One is to replace the existing Dongbu Expressway, and the other is to connect Gangnam and Gangbu. Traffic analysis showed that the risk of traffic demand turned out to be low. There is not much risk to share by the government and the private sector. It was decided that this project would proceed using the BTO method, in which the private sector takes a full demand risk. The 2 cases mentioned above look similar, but different risk-sharing methods were applied due to the different traffic demand risk. It is difficult to determine which method should be used for projects with only one variable, traffic demand risk. The government or local government's preference can also affect the decisions. If local governments are reluctant to pay contingent liabilities during the operation period, they will prefer the BTO type. In contrast, government and local government with severe resistance to risk in user fees would prefer to sharing risk by utilizing the BTOA type. In addition, the private contractors' preference in terms of risk sharing or the financial market condition can also affect the decision of which type to use. Let's move on to the conclusion. There are two major lessons that we can learn from Korea's PPP experience. First, it is important to select a suitable models for each project by considering its characteristics. Second, it is necessary to continuously develop a variety of models according to change in the market environment. Due to the nature of PPP project, we do not know what event and outcome will occur during the long-term operation period. Therefore, it is required to develop various models to cope with situation flexibly. This marks the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Koo. In a very short period of time, he covered the evolution of the risk-sharing scheme on the PPP transportation project. Actually, the contingent liability became one of the keywords in the management of the PPP because of the guarantee level by the government sometimes becomes the event, and the current government has to pay for the take the burden which was assigned in the previous government. So there is a kind of concern about the fiscal management on the PPP project. So that is why the Korea has evolved risk-sharing schemes for the past 20 years. Okay, actually, in his presentation, he also added some technical details about the risk-sharing schemes, maybe. So you can get his presentation materials for more detailed information. Okay, thank you, Dr. Ko. And I would like to invite our second speaker, Mr. Eunil Lee. Mr. Eunil Lee is working for the EDUMAC, Educational Facility Research and Management Center at Korean Educational Development Institute. EDUMAC is specialized in the management of the school project, school PPP project under the BTL contract type. In 2005, Korean government decided to expand the scope of the PPP project to include many school facilities through the private financing. So EDUMAC was created as one of the PPP unit to manage the school project. Okay. So he has been working for EDUMAC for 15 years. So I think he is the history of the school PPP project in Korea. So he is ready to share the experience of the school PPP project. Mr. Lee.
Yes, thank you. Hello. This speaker is Eunil Lee, working at KD EDUMAC. It's a pleasure to meet you. Today, I will make a presentation about the experience and lesson learned from the Korean Educational Facility BTL business. Yes, I'll speak to you about 4 main points. The first is about an introduction of KD EDUMAC, where I am currently working. The second is about the introduction and process of BTL business. The third is about the current status and main issues. The fourth is about the future plan of BTL business and the main lesson learned from each process. Let me tell you about the organizational structure of EDUMEC. EDUMEC is an institution established to support for the Ministry of Education's policy research and BTL business. Korea's BTL businesses are directed by the Ministry of Strategy and Finance, and PMEC of KDI is playing a major role in supporting those businesses as a professional institution. The scope of the BTL business has gradually expanded from SOC to educational facility, military facility for the Ministry of National Defense and cultural facilities. The Ministry of Education has established an operation EDUMEC in KD to support the educational facility BTL business since 2006. Let's take a look at the major history of EDUMEC. In 2006, EDUMEC launched. EDUMEC was designated as a specialized institution for the educational facility BTL business. The following is the organizational chart of KD. EDUMEC is affiliated with KD, where a total of 49 employees currently work. The work of EDUMEC is carried out by each team. In each team, doctors, architects, lawyers, accountants are working to support the work for educational facilities. The following is information on the main tasks of each team at EDUMEC. The BTL support team carry out the tasks of a specialized institution for the educational facility BTL business. They include support for the policy of the Ministry of Education, the development of a manual for the BTL business, and the performance analysis of the BTL business. Let me explain about the process and structure of the educational facility BTL business. Korea's PPP law has been enacted for the creative and efficient expansion and operation of social infrastructure by encouraging private companies to invest in them. As the Private Investment Act was amended in 2005, living infrastructure such as school, military accommodations were added to the existing target facilities. The scope of target facilities was expanded in 2020. There are 4 types of metropolitan and provincial office of education BTL business. New construction is the most common type. Innovation is to demolish deteriorated existing buildings and then rebuild them. A small-scale business is for existing schools that do not have indoor gym. The extension is the new establishment of annex buildings when the number of classrooms in existing school is not enough. The National University BTL business was carried out for dormitories. The BTL business for dormitories and National University were carried out from 2005 to 2007. In 2012, the BTL business for dormitories began to be promoted again according to the policy of the Ministry of Education to increase the total capacity of dormitories and national universities. The following is the business procedure for the BTL business. The entire process from the establishment of a business plan to the resolution of the business content by the National Assembly must be carried out in the year before the business is notified. It takes about 40 months from the establishment of a master plan to the completion of the building. The operation period of the educational facility BTL business is notified to be 20 years. In relation to the educational facility BTL business, the competence authority prepare its desired level of output specification and then notify the project. The project participant organize SPC and prepare project proposal, then reflect the notified project details. SPC selected as a prepared negotiator among project participants will sign the concession agreement with the competence authority. EDUMEC supports takes in all stages as a specialized institution for the BTL business. Let me tell you about the promotion status and main text of the BTL business. The educational facility BTL business was carried out in each of elementary and middle school and national universities. The elementary and middle school BTL business was carried out from 2005 to 2013. The dormitory project of National University was promoted by the BTL business from 2005 to 2006. The Ministry of Education has been implementing a policy to promote the expansion of dormitories through the BTL business since 2012. The following is the provision method of payment from the government for the educational facility. The payment from the government are provided, including the total project cost and operation cost. The competent authority measure performance through performance evaluation before the payment are provided. The following is the operation case of the elementary school BTL business. The BTL business made it possible to secure the higher quality of facilities. As SPC is responsible for the management and operation of facility, teachers can focus on teaching their one student. The following is the dormitory project of National University based on the BTL business. The newly built dormitories are based on the double occupancy. Each room is equipped with a private toilet and shower for the convenience of students. They also have various amenities such as sports facilities, cafeterias, convenience store, cafes. The following is about user satisfaction. The overall cost of the dormitories is relatively higher in the BTL business than the counterpart. On the other hand, user satisfaction for dormitories based on the BTL business is relatively higher than the counterpart. The reasons are thought to be higher quality facility and facility management by professional operators. The following are the main takes of the educational facility BTL business. The educational facility BTL business has been promoted in Korea since 2005, and its operation period is 20 years. The operation period of the many BTL business will end after 2025. For projects whose the operation period is to be terminated, a prior review of future operation method must be made. The following are the future prospects and the lessons learned from the educational facility BTL business. The National University BTL business was applied only to the dormitory project. This was because it was not possible to carry out many projects at the same time with limited finance. The BTL business to improve the deteriorated educational facility of National University will be promoted according to the policy of the Ministry of Education from 2021. The following is the Metropolitan and Provincial Office of Education BTL business. The Ministry of Education is promoting policy for Green Smart Future Schools as part of the government Green New Deal policy. It is planning a project to improve the existing deteriorated school buildings from 2021 to 2025. The following are considerations that should be taken when promoting the BTL business. The VPM test should be conducted with the performance specification that reflect the desired facility level. It is possible to increase the efficiency of work when supporting the competence authority through a standardized manual prepared by a specialized institution for the BTL business. That's all I have for you today. ETNL hopes that the various institutions abroad will be enhanced in the future. Thank you for your time and attention.
Dr. Park, I believe you're on mute. Dr. Park, I believe you're on mute. You are still muted. Dr. Park, sorry, if you can hear me, you are on mute.
Sorry. Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you, Daniel. Okay. Let's move on to our third speaker, Dr. Hee-Ju Hwang. He is also working with PMAC. He is a specialist at the PPP finance team. Before he joined the PMAC in 2015, he used to work for the private company under the Uri Financial Group. So he has experience both in the public and the private sector. When he was with the Uri Financial Group, he used to work as a financial analyst and accounting matters. So he also holds a certified financial analyst and certified public account licensed in the state of Washington. Today, he is going to talk about the PPP financing and the refinancing issues and lessons in Korea. PPP, as all of us know, that is a long contract, 20 or 30 years of the operation contract, and the market condition changes. In particular, the terms of the borrowing changes. So actually, there is it's going to be good to allow some flexibilities of the refinancing, but one of the key issues is how to manage or how to share the gains from the refinancing. So Dr. Hee-Ju Hwang will talk about the practice in Korea on the PPP project. Dr. Hwang.
Thank you, Professor Park. And first of all, I'd like to give my appreciation for everyone for inviting me. And I'll share my screen. Hi, my name is Dr. Hee-Ju Hwang, and I'm a financial specialist at KDI PMAC, and I'm going to introduce Korean PPP financing and refinancing and talk about relevant issue and lessons. First, I'd like to start by discussing issues and lessons regarding the initial finance of PPP in Korea. As you know, PPP used a project finance method, aka PF, which is a widely used financing method for infrastructure. Project finance is a long-term financing of PPP based on the projected cash flow. And in project finance, a special purpose company, or SPC, is established for each project, and the SPC become the party to all contracts, including concession agreement with the government. The financing source of SPC is classified into two categories, equity and debt. Although there exists the mezzanine finance, which is a hybrid of equity and debt. When the total private investment amount is determined, the private sector raised fund through the equity and debt. In general, equity consists of 5 to 15% of the total investment, and the rest of total investment is funded through debt financing. The equity is most fundamental financing source. Generally, equity is the last and final beneficiary after the repayment of debt, and it is also has the highest risk and highest return. Because equity is the last beneficiary, it acts as a buffer for debt providers. So it is believed that the higher equity ratio, the higher the financial stability for the debt provider. Equity is financed by a project sponsor, which is a construction investor or financial investor in most cases. Among the financial investors, private equity fund or private debt fund are most common, and these are also provide shareholders loan or subordinate debt. In the project finance, the equity dividend is limited until the full repayment of the senior debt, and the equity investor receive nothing for more than 10 to 20 years. So by co-investing with the subordinate debt, they can receive some interest from subordinate debt even when the senior debt is not yet fully repaid. On the other hand, debt financing is raised by the bank or insurance companies who prefer the low risk and low return. In principle, debt financing should be independent to the equity so that the debt provider reviews the project independently and achieve the efficiency by competitions. Subordinate debt is between the equity and debt. While it is legally similar to the debt, however, it is more closely related to the equity in reality. Why? Because the subordinate debt comes from the equity provider. It is same source with the equity provider. With regard to the equity, minimum equity ratio, or MER, is regulated for financial stability. Of course, equity is required by debt provider. However, MER is also regulated from the government's perspective. In calculating MER, initial equity amount is regulated based on the contributed capital, not including retained earning in operation period. In case of BTO, 15% of private investment is required for the construction period and 10% of concession right in the operation period. And in case of BTL, the MER is 5% in most cases, but in contrast to the BTO, there is no reduction of MER in the operation period. This slide shows the history of MER. In 2004, before the introduction of BTL, the MER was 20% 25% of the total private investment. But there were incentives for participation of financial investors. When financial investors exceed 50% of the total equity, 20% of the equity MER can be lowered to the 20%. However, the 5% reduction of MER have to be substituted by the subordinate debt. In 2005, 10% of MER in operation period was introduced, as well as the introduction of MER of PTL. In 2015, the MER is lowered to 15%, regardless of financial investors' equity financing. Recently, in 2020, an additional 5% point reduction of the MER was introduced for lower risk projects, but it is only limited number of projects applied. So with regard to the PPP financing, I would like to raise the following issues for discussions. First, I would like to discuss about the MER requirements. In Korean PPP, equity financing is not an attractive investment for all investors, and it is regarded as an additional cost. As you know, equity is risk and pursues upside potential, but in PPP, the opportunities for upside are limited due to the limitation of other business and optimism bias of demand estimations. So equity investors regard the equity as an additional cost for construction investor or financial investors. And second issue is interdependent financing. Korean PPP financing market, senior creditors such as bank play key role, but it is inevitable for them to participate as an equity investor due to high liquidity of financial market. So they established private equity fund or private debt fund and participate in equity and subordinate debt of SPC as well as senior debt. Under the conditions of interdependent financing, there exists high possibility of excessive interest rates and lowered the possibility of the refinancing due to indirect control from the senior creditors. If an independent financial investor exists, it may be possible to avoid this kind of situation, but there are not many independent financial investors even in well-developed Korean financial market. In part 2, I'd like to introduce refinancing of PPP and associated issues. Refinancing is the act of changing debt capital for the better conditions, and it is commonly occurred in decreasing interest rates. In general, gains from the decreased interest rate go directly to the equity holders. However, in PPP, including Korea, there exists the condition of refinancing gain sharing, in which both the public and private shares the benefit of the refinancing. In Korea, we define PPP refinancing as three kinds of events, which includes more than 5% change of shareholders, reduction of equity ratio, and the significant change of debt financing conditions. In these circumstances, public and private share refinancing gains. This is because the government provides many benefits and support, such as the provision of land, subsidies, or termination payments. Currently, 30% of refinancing gain goes to the public, although it is possible to share up to 40 to 50% for the project with MRG or risk share payment. The refinancing gain can be used to reduce user fee or reduce concession period or MRG. It is possible to use as a cash payment or others. However, the most of refinancing gain is used for reduction of the user fee. As you can see in this table, this project cut the user fee based on the refinancing gain. Refinancing was adopted for the Korean PPP basic plan in 2004, and we include a refinancing gain share clause in a concession agreement, which was signed after 2004. In 2007, we announced a detailed guideline for calculation method for refinancing gain. In addition, refinancing gain was obliged to be reviewed by KDI PMAC. In 2014, the second version of the guideline was announced, which is also current version. However, we are currently preparing for the third version of the guideline, which reflects the issues identified after the announcement of the second version of guideline. So one of the issues I want to discuss about refinancing is the simultaneous adoption of refinancing gain and PPP system. In Korea, we adopted PPP in the middle of the 1990s, and there was no justification to share refinancing gain in the concession agreement. So we had struggled to share the refinancing gain for initial projects based on the individual negotiations. And it was not easy because the absence of the refinancing gain share clause in the concession agreement. After the refinancing gain sharing system was adopted, it was not that difficult to apply the gain sharing, so I'd like to recommend establishing the refinancing gain share system along with the adoption of PPP for countries in the adoption stage of PPP. The another issue is that we encountered the limited opportunities for refinancing gain sharing due to the low interest rate. I can say that the 5-year government bond yield is low enough and currently slightly increasing. Under the increasing interest rate circumstances, there are limited chances for refinancing gain sharing. Considering that refinancing gain sharing is the only official way to reduce user fee without additional government expense. However, the current interest rate is not favorable conditions. So far, we have discussed about the financing and refinancing issue in case of Korea. Based on this issue, lesson we learned includes the followings. First of all, optimal MER should be concerned for the optimal stability and cost efficiency of PPP. And second, it is better to avoid interdependent financing structure for cost efficiency. Third, it is more desirable to adopt refinancing gain sharing at the same time as the adoption of PPP. However, under the circumstances of low interest rates, the chances for the refinancing gain sharing is limited. So far, we discussed the issues about the financing and refinancing of Korean PPP. Korea is an early adopter of PPP system, and we have gone through the trial and errors until now, and we are still struggling to reduce these possible future issues. In conclusion, I hope that today's discussions will help the adoption or revision of the PPP system in the other countries. Thank you for your listening.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Huang, for a very insightful presentation. And thank you all three presenters for your timekeeping. But even though we have only 5 minutes for the Q&A session. So I'd like to open the floor to the audience. Anybody has a question? Actually, we have one question from Irina Tay, SOS Children's Biology International. Actually, this is a question to Mr. Eunil Lee. The Irina asks, does operational cost of schools include cost of educational services as well? And if yes, do you evaluate the quality of these services too? So to see what social outcomes this PPP project brought to the local communities. So those, can you see the questions on the chat box? Maybe Mr. Lee, maybe I can answer the response. It's about the system of the BTL. So, Mr. Lee, can you respond?
교수님께서 직접 답변하셔도 괜찮을 것 같아요.
Okay, let me respond to the Irina Tay on behalf of Mr. Lee. Actually, in Korea, on the social infrastructure, we divide the services into two categories. One is core services, and the second category of services, non-core services. In case of the school PPP project, the educational service is core services. So in the scope of the PPP contract under the BTL model is only about the non-core services. So the same teachers as the non-BTL or conventional schools are same. So same teachers teach. I mean the public the teachers teaches the student in the PPP school. So there is no difference in terms of the education qualities between the BTL and non-BTL schools. Actually, I had some opportunity to compare the user satisfaction about between the BTL schools and non-BTL schools. Most of the users and the parents of the students were more satisfied with the services provided by the BTL schools than the conventional schools. Okay, and we have another question to Dr. Huang. For financial investors in equity, what has been the range of the investment return that has been achieved? Okay, Dr. Wang, do you have some statistics about the return on equity?
Of course, the equity is required the highest return, but its final return is not determined because the final return is determined after the end of the operation period. So unfortunately, we adopted PPP in mid of 90s, and we do not have the result of investment result of equity. So we do not have the result of the investment rate of return. So, but the thing I can say that they requires highest return more than the senior or subordinate debt.
Okay, well, adding on his responses, as Dr. Huang talked in his presentation, there is the interdependency of the financing. I mean, there are many strategic financial strategic investors who plays the role of the investors and also play the role of the lenders. So from the perspective of that kind of strategic investors, the blended return on equity is more important than the pure return on equity. So unfortunately, PMAC does not collect such kind of statistics so far. Okay, and we have another question from Ashai Ahuja to Dr. Huang. How active are local banks, I mean Korean banks, in providing financing for PPP project being promoted with foreign investors? So how local, yeah.
As far as I know, the foreign investors in Korean PPP market is not common. The financial investor is only consists of the domestic financial institutions, because there are a lot of the liquidity in financial market, so we don't need to be financed from the foreign investors.
Actually, Dr. Huang, the focus of the question is, if the foreign investors would like to invest in Korean PPP project, they are, I mean, the local banks are ready to collaborate with the foreign investors in the Korean PPP market. Yeah, that is the point of the question. So how active are local banks in providing financing for PPP project being promoted with foreign investors? So maybe there are some cases that some foreign investors like Macquarie banks and some other investors participated in the Korean PPP project. So did they collaborate with the Korean lenders? Yeah.
There are not many the foreign investors, but there are some cases of such as Macquarie banks. But the ultimate investor of the Macquarie's fund is the Korean banks and National Pension Service of Korea. So there are some cases of the co-work with domestic and foreign banks and foreign financial institutions, but I can say that it is not common in Korea.
Okay. Adding on Dr. Wang's responses, actually, it depends on the market condition, if I understand correctly. So the attitude of the local bankers depends on the government policies, in particular the risk-sharing schemes. In the early 2000s, when the government took a lot of project risk, local banks, the domestic, the local banks were ready to collaborate with any investors, including foreign investors. But these days, actually, the Korean government would like to is not very active to taking substantial risks. So I think it depends on the market condition, in particular the government policies. Okay, I think we are already running out of time. So if there is no further questions, let me stop here for the session 2. I'd like to congratulate the 3 presenters for successful delivery, and thank all the audience for your participation. Thank you very much. This concludes the session 2.
Thank you very much, Dr. Park, for the smooth moderation, and as well as to Dr. Koo, Mr. Lee, and Dr. Huang for the very in-depth presentation. Much appreciated as well. Given that we are more than halfway through the meeting, I would now like to invite everyone to take a very quick 5 minutes break to refresh. We will promptly begin in 5 minutes with the timer on screen for your reference. So go ahead and see you shortly. Thank you again.